Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name's Andy R and this is the Brotherhood of Men, and you brothers are in for a bit of a treat today. So what's the subject? Who's the daddy? Who's the daddy? It's a follow-up from my last video when I was telling you about friends of mine, Jim and Dave, who well, you need to watch the video. But I think it needed a follow-up, and not about their story, but generally about DNA testing and men and such like. I read this headline and I want to read it to you. Just get my tablet up, so you'll have to bear with me a second whilst I just get the story up. Now, this is from the Manchester Evening News. For those of you not from the UK or England specifically, Manchester is a city in the northern part of England. Well, their evening news, and I'll show you it. There it is. Can you read that? It says, nearly half of men who take paternity tests are not the real father. Let me say that again. Nearly half of men who take paternity tests are not the real father. Nearly 50%. Now, what does that say to you? Does that say that 50% of all men are not the father? In or not in relationships, in or not marriage? No, it doesn't mean that at all. No, what it means is that there was enough doubt in those men's minds that they specifically sought out a paternity test. So they had to have doubt in their mind to start with before they went for a paternity test. And when they got them, nearly half of them were right to have doubts, and nearly half of them were not right to have doubts. But they had doubts. So nearly 50%, sorry, I think it broke down in the countries in Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland to a slightly different percentage. In England, I think it was 40, in fact I could read it, it's 48%. In Scotland it was 42%. These are high numbers. These are not piddling amounts. But those guys who got those tests had enough doubt that they paid to get a test. And that's the other thing as well. You have to pay for a DNA test. And it's not massively expensive, but it's not cheap either. Now let's look at the court system when it comes to DNA tests. Because all things aren't equal. Aren't men and women supposed to be treated equally? Well, apparently not by the courts, like I've said before. So let's read again. Now this is about DNA testing. So it says, can a man refuse to have a DNA test? Well, yes he can. Yes he can. He can refuse to have a DNA test, legally speaking. But I'm going to read this so I don't get it wrong and be accused of paternity test. This is obviously of making it up or speaking it wrongly. So, can a woman be forced to have a DNA test? A mother, sorry. Generally speaking, I'm reading this straight off the tablet. Generally speaking, a mother cannot refuse a paternity test, as there is no good reason for her to do so. Really? No good reason? I can think of a few. But you notice the wording, generally speaking. So in that, it's, yeah, you know, depends what the case is. We'll make it up as we go along. Now let's see what it says about men. If an alleged father refuses to take a paternity test, he can be held in contempt of court, which comes with a heavy fine and jail time. Did you notice the difference in wording there? A woman can generally, she won't refuse because generally she knows who the father is. Let me read you something else. This is about child maintenance, and this is something you need to really get your heads around, guys. Can a man refuse to have a DNA test? Legally, yes, a man can refuse to have a DNA test. However, it will be presumed, if he does, it will be presumed by the court that he is the father and maintenance awarded against him. See any double standards there at all, guys? I've said many, many times before, I hate hypocrisy, double standards. It grinds my gears, it makes my teeth itch. But generally, a woman will give a DNA sample. Generally. Oh, and here's the other thing as well. Another double standard here between men and women. If a paternity test needs to be taken, all parties need to agree to it. So the man who has his doubts about that child has to agree to have his DNA taken. Fair enough, he's got his doubts, he wants to know one way or another. The mother has to give permission, not the father, the mother has to give permission for DNA to be taken from the child if he or she is under 16. Let me say that again. If the father refuses to have a DNA test, or suspected father, he's presumed by the courts to be the father, and if he refuses to give DNA sample, he's held in contempt of court and can do jail time and is fined. And I guarantee if he doesn't do jail time, he still will be fined. But the woman generally, softer words there, isn't it? Generally won't refuse. Why would she? Well, maybe because she knows that the kid isn't his and she wants his money. Maybe. Or how about she refuses to let, and this is the bit that blasts my mind. The woman has to give, the mother, has to give permission for the child to be DNA tested. The mother has to give permission, written permission, for the child to be DNA tested. I thought we were equal. Isn't the father 50% of the parent, therefore has the same right? Can't he give permission for the child to be DNA tested? Oh no, that's another thing as well. Unless you're married to the mother and have children together, you have no parental rights on decisions made of your child. You don't see a little bit of inequality there, a bit of inequity? And like it said down there, if a man decides, I'm not the father of this child. Oh, and that's another thing as well. With the child maintenance things, you have to prove you're not the father. You have to, out of your own pocket, get DNA, take a DNA test to prove you're not the child's father before they will even consider not keep garnishing your wages. In other words, taking child support from you. So, say you found out you're not child X's father. You ring up child maintenance and say, I'm not this child's father. Okay, we'll make a note of that. Now say the child's 5. You've been paying child support for 5 years. So, I mean, you and the mother aren't together, that's why you're paying child maintenance. So for 5 years you've been paying for a child that isn't yours. You then go to the expense of getting a DNA sample and DNA testing done, which now proves you're not the child. Because we live in a common law country, and that means presumed innocent until proven guilty. Oh, unless of course you're dealing with child maintenance, then you're presumed to be guilty until you can prove your innocence. So let's say you went and proved your innocence. I am not the child's father. Okay, we've received the DNA from a reputable lab that we recognise. Not just any lab, but the lab that we recognise. That's another of their conditions. Okay, you don't have to pay any more child maintenance. Oh, brilliant. What about the child maintenance I've paid my ex-partner through you to her? Do I get that back, the last 5 years? Oh, no. No, we only pay back from when you first brought up your suspicions and claimed that you weren't the father. So if it took you 6 months to get all of your ducks in a row, you phoned them day one, and then 6 months later it turns out the DNA proves that you're not the father, you've carried on paying child maintenance for that 6 months. They will pay that back to you. The 5 years before that, I'll say bye-bye to that. But as I said in the last video when we were talking about Jim's situation, it's fraud to put something on a legal document that isn't true. Just let that one sit in your mind for a minute. It's fraud to put on a legal document something that isn't true. Now the mother could turn around and say, well, I didn't know you weren't the father, so I wasn't committing fraud. No. You did know that you slept with somebody else, and you didn't even mention it. That's fraud. Because there should have at least been some doubt in your mind of who the father is. Or did you sleep with so many men that you just flipped a coin? You see what I'm saying? She can say, I didn't know the child wasn't yours, and that would be a truthful situation. But she can't truthfully say, but there was nobody else in the running. So signing that legal document, knowing that she couldn't 100% say the child was his, got a case for fraud. That's just my opinion. What do I know? I'm not a solicitor, and neither are most of you, so probably, find out what the laws are in your country, your state, concerning these things. But as I said, for Jim, knowing that it could have ruined her career, he got everything he needed, which was cleanly away from. And when you tell stories like this, I can understand why so many guys are going all the way MGTOW. In other words, I want nothing to do with women. And if that's the right choice for you, yeah, I applaud you, and I'll shake your hand and best of luck to you. Seriously, that's great, because you made the right choice for you, if that was the right choice. I don't believe in having nothing to do with women for the simple reason I enjoy sex. Now, there are many ways this can happen without having a relationship, but I kind of enjoy being with my woman. Like I say, I love the woman to bits. But don't get me wrong, I won't get married. And neither should you. Everything's stacked against you if you do. Anyway, this is the end of today's talk. So my name's Andy R. This is the Brotherhood of Men, and I'll talk to you soon. I'm going for a cup of tea because I definitely earned one. Bye now.